In 1974, I was tasked with guarding a sinister locked room. 12 terrifying rules were revealed. Night fell heavy over the crumbling community center, and as I stepped out of my rusted truck, an icy grip of dread curled around my heart. The parking lot lay shrouded in a thin mist, a spectral blanket amplifying the unsettling silence. Alone and aware of the pounding in my chest, I tightened my grip on the flashlight, feeling the weight of my own family's burdens. Would this job really bring stability, or was I walking into something worse than I ever imagined? The walls loomed tall, coated in years of peeling paint. As I began my rounds, the flickering lights cast twisting shadows that played tricks on my mind. One door, an unassuming part of the hallway, caught my eye, the sort that everyone seemed to avoid. An unnatural chill wafted from it, and stopped in front, heart racing. I blinked as my gaze landed on a yellowed sheet pinned to the wall beside it, 12 jagged rules written in a frenzied scrawl. Trust no one, it read. Panic surged. The very neighbors I had grown up with flashed across my mind. Smiling families turned sinister, like faces in a funhouse mirror. The first night passed in eerie stillness. I fought back sleep, haunted by whispers that danced through my mind, twisting into nightmares. I held on to the belief that it was just another boring shift, but that notion shattered with my second night's stroke of midnight. Whispers spilled from behind the locked door, curling around the beams of my flashlight like smoke, a child's voice calling out, desperate familiar. My heart plummeted as a vision of little Samantha, the girl from across the street, eternally giggling and chasing butterflies, flooded my mind. She had been missing for weeks. The innocence we shared suddenly felt tainted in the ghastly light of reality. The clock ticked ominously as I tried to report her disappearance. The local cops, complete with their dismissive grunts and flippant words, waved me off. Just another runaway, they scoffed. Each denial was like a knife twisting in my gut as I realized the neighbors I once looked up to were drowning in their apathy. It felt as if I was trapped in a web spun from the darkest fears of suburbia. The very homes where laughter once echoed now hid secrets that could crumble the surface of our community. Desperation clawed at me. As I returned to the seemingly innocuous door, its atmosphere thick with dread, I could barely believe my eyes. The door was cracked open. The abyss beyond beckoned me with the daunting promise of truth. Mustering every ounce of courage, I stepped closer, but before my foot crossed the threshold, frantic cries filled my ears, drowning out common sense. Insanity surged through me. Just as I prepared to plunge into the consuming darkness, the door slammed shut, rattling as if a beast waited within. Every instinct screamed for me to flee. But just as quickly, curiosity gripped me. What unspeakable horror hid behind those wooden planks? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the air thickened around me, I hesitated. The whispers transformed into a deafening clamor. Memories of Samantha flashed through my mind like ghostly film reels. Shadows danced. I could feel something waiting, hungry for my next move. Could I bear to confront the darkness in that room? Or would the ghosts of suburbia pull me down with them, to remain forever entwined in a sinister tapestry of silence? The air grew colder as I stood there, paralyzed by the slamming door's echo. A shiver shot through me, and I fought the urge to bolt. I needed to know what lay beyond that threshold, but terror held my feet firmly against the worn floorboards. Beyond the door, the whispers morphed into a low, mournful hum that oddly resembled terrifying lullabies. I shook my head, reminding myself that I was a guardian, a protector, yet the voice that twisted my gut was not one of reassurance. I stepped back, breathing ragged and shallow, focusing on the sliver of light peeking from the frame. What had slipped through the cracks? My fingers itched to reach out, but the caution printed on the rule sheet loomed large in my mind. The faint light flickered as though something inside was fighting for release. Was I really prepared to confront whatever lay in the darkness? Cornered by indecision, I struggled with a primal instinct, the desire to save Samantha, save my past, save my sanity. A faint rustle came from within, a whisper of fabric brushing against something hard. It was her. My pulse quickened. Maybe she was alive, maybe I could help pull back the veil of this horror. That thought sparked a fire in my chest. I stepped forward again, heart hammering against my ribcage. Samantha. I called, voice shaking but urgent. Are you in there? Silence draped over me, thick enough to suffocate. Moments stretched endlessly until a hoarse voice fractured the quiet, a mere breath of sound. Help me. I pressed against the door, barely hearing my heartbeat over the fading voice. The wood felt warm beneath my palm, as if alive. I twisted the knob not locked. And pushed it open slowly, the hinges groaning in protest. Inside, darkness swallowed the light. The faintest hint of cold air gusted out, the smell of decay, of old things left to rot. My flashlight sweep pulled the shadows in tight. Crumbling shelves lined the room, old toys, pictures, relics of forgotten lives. My breath caught as I zeroed in on a small, dark shape curled in the corner. Sam! I gasped, lunging forward. But as I approached, the shape stretched, morphing into grotesque forms that melted from one to another, shadows draped in girlish laughter that echoed off the walls. My stomach turned. They were not just shadows. They were lost souls, each claiming a piece of the room for themselves. I stumbled back, irritation and despair clutching me tight. What happened? I whispered into the void. Whispers responded more frantic this time, spiraling around my mind, drowning me in the past. I saw her face again, Samantha's innocent smile against the sunlight. My heart raced, the voices strangling clarity from me. Suddenly, a mirror reflected a silhouette standing right behind me. I whipped around, mouth agape as I faced a figure. The resemblance was too uncanny, not Samantha but something even more chilling, a warped doppelganger, mirroring her movements with twisted glee. It grinned, deep-set eyes dark as night. With a jolt, I bolted from the room, terror propelling my limbs. The laughter surged behind me, harmonizing with the pulse of dread pounding in my ears. I needed to get out. As I reached the entrance, a cold hand grasped my ankle, pulling me back into the reality I desperately wanted to escape. I yanked my foot free, stumbling into the hallway with bated breath. At that moment, I realized I hadn't just crossed a threshold, I had stepped into something alive. The entire building hummed with malignant energy, and it yearned for more. What if this energy could pull me in too? Or worse, what if there was no escape? The thought left a bitter taste in my mouth as I turned, adrenaline still coursing through my veins. Outside the community center, under the moon's ghostly light, shadows skittered, and I felt the eyes of my neighbors watching from behind their curtains. I sprinted to my truck, determined to escape this nightmare, but as I turned the engine over, a movement in the corner of my eye snagged my attention. A small figure, just beyond the mist, stood waiting. I squinted into the gray haze. Samantha? I called, voice heaving, as the form swayed lightly. But instead of a girl, the figure morphed, twisting into an unsettling blend of every face I had ever known, distorting the very fabric of reality. What fresh horror was this? I slammed the truck door shut, heart pounding, and yelled into the stillness, demanding answers. The figure held still, and then began to approach. What dark truth was about to uncoil? I blinked, the figure absorbing my focus. Its features twisted and shifted, a grotesque display of my past, ghostly faces that haunted my nightmares. I felt bile rise in my throat, it was as if all my regrets had taken shape. The figure's lips curled into a mocking smile, a mirage of familiarity that sent a jolt of panic through me. I stepped back, heart racing like an out-of-control freight train. "Stay back!" I yelled, though my voice cracked, edged with fear. The figure stopped, dark eyes narrowing, studying me with a predatory intensity. Time stretched, every second amplifying the dread that wrapped around me. This wasn't simply a specter, it was a taunt, a demon draped in the form of loved ones, ready to pull me into some unknown abyss where I might mingle among their twisted souls. I couldn't breathe. Then I heard it again, the whispers. They surged from the depths of the community center, rising like a choking fog. "Join us, be one of us." The undercurrent of despair seethed through me, recalling the laughter I just fled from. My gut twisted, realizing the chilling truth behind my desperate search for Samantha. This place needed tethering to something dark, and I was its unwitting bait. "No!" I shouted defiantly, fighting against the visceral draw that beckoned me back. I leapt into my truck, slamming the door with trembling hands. My instincts screamed at me to leave, to get the hell out of there, but curiosity pinched at the edges of my mind. What if she's in there? The thought clawed at me. I turned the key in the ignition, the engine sputtering with reluctance. I cast one last glance toward the figure, now frozen and still, as if contemplating whether to pursue. With a surge of desperation, I pulled away, tires squealing against the gravel as I tore down the path leading from the ominous community center. But as I sped away, my phone vibrated violently in the cup holder. The screen lit up a message from a number I didn't recognize. "They're watching you." Panic surged through my veins as I gripped the wheel tightly, glancing in the rearview mirror. Beneath the glow of the moon, the shadows elongated, stretching infinitely behind me. My heart hammered. Were they truly following? The darkness seemed to pulse and breathe all around, and I could swear I felt cold, phantom hands graze against the side of the truck, a warning, a beckoning. "Get a grip!" I muttered aloud, trying to shake off the growing paranoia. I drove faster, the asphalt racing beneath me, but the sensation of being watched refused to relent. I turned onto my street, glancing sideways into the neighbors' yards, half expecting them to leap out, shouting warnings or perhaps screams. When I finally parked, I felt the weight of the silence wrapping around me. The house loomed ahead, an abysmal shadow. I reached for the door, but a voice echoed in my head, the same haunted fragments that had carried me back into that cursed room. "There are rules and you broke them." I paused, breath caught in my throat. How many rules? How many lives had been caught in the community center's snare? A low hum vibrated in the air, and suddenly, trembling fingers flew to my pocket, retrieving the rule sheet I had stolen. My gut twisted again. Each rule bled into me like ink running through paper. I had to hold on to the truth that knowledge would be my shield. But if Samantha was still out there, I couldn't let this curse continue to reach beyond those walls. Then, a sudden shatter of glass broke my train of thought. I turned, heart racing, as silhouettes crossed my yard, dark shapes gliding like phantoms between the trees. I should have locked the door, I should have driven far away, but the determination to find Samantha drove me to move. "Sam!" I shouted, voice trembling but full of urgency. Would she answer back? But deep down, I feared finding the answer within the shadows that loomed ever closer. What horrifying force had I awakened, and would I be strong enough to face it? The night held its breath, waiting for my next move. The darkness clung to me as I stepped away from the truck, each footfall echoing against the suffocating silence that enveloped the yard. The air was thick, electric, as though it held its breath, waiting for something to shatter the stillness. Shadows flickered, darting like memories at the edge of my vision, and I squinted into the deep blackness where the trees loomed like sentinels. "Sam?" I called again, the word heavy on my lips. Every syllable felt like a desperate plea, stretched thin against the vast void that surrounded me. I willed my heart to calm, but it pounded defiantly, loud enough that I could almost hear it over the rustling leaves. A chill raced down my spine as I overheard muffled whispers drifting closer, sinister and soft. She is here," they repeated, weaving through the branches like a haunting melody. I felt their cold touch wrap around me, tightening, squeezing until I could barely breathe. Panic clawed at my throat. The glass had shattered again, this time from the back of the house. A clear sign that whatever was haunting me was no longer confined to the community center. I need to get inside. A wave of nausea hit me as I dashed toward the porch, my thoughts a whirlpool of dread. What if Sam was inside? What if she had already become part of them? I fumbled with the door handle, heart pounding in my ears, praying it wouldn't be locked. The door swung open with a groan, an invitation into the darkness, heavy with the scent of abandonment. Stepping inside, the musty air wrapped around me, holding me captive. "Sam!" I cried again, voice breaking, desperate. Silence echoed back. A flickering light drew my eye to the living room. The old lamp flickered, an incessant rhythm that seemed to mock my fear. I crept forward, step by step, every creak of the floorboard scraping against the chilling stillness. Shadows danced on the wall, merging and splitting. It felt alive, watching, waiting for me to stumble. And just as I reached the threshold, my phone buzzed again, jolting me. I pulled it from my pocket, fingers shaking. Another message from the unknown number read, "It's safer with us." The fear turned to ice in my veins. "What do you mean?" I whispered, glancing again toward the door as if expecting something to follow behind. "You've been warned," came the reply as I felt something brush against me, freezing my heart. A figure lurked beside the lamp, outlined in the dim glow. It was a woman, her features indistinct but her eyes burned brightly. I shouted, "Sam?" But she simply shook her head, a frown marking her face. "Don't listen to them," she whispered, voice trembling. "It's not safe here." "What do you mean?" Panic clawed through every word. "Where are you?" "Follow the rules," she urged, drawing nearer, the shadows twisting around her. "You broke them." "You have to." Before she could finish, the air thickened, oppressive as the whispers grew into an overwhelming chorus, chanting my name in discord. "Join us, be one of us." The shadows surged, swirling around her, pulling her back as her terrified eyes locked onto mine. "Sam!" I screamed, rushing toward her, but the darkness swallowed her whole, leaving me in suffocating silence yet again. Panic surged. I spun around, all senses on high alert. I had to make a choice: leave this house or risk staying and finding out what those whispers wanted. The shadows seemed to laugh now, encroaching, growing bolder. I hesitated. The rules swirled in my mind like a panicked storm, taunting me. I had to keep walking, but where could I go amid this chaos? "Get out!" my instincts roared. I turned back toward the door, but it slammed shut with an echoing thud. And suddenly, they were there, the silhouettes from the yard, their faces obscured, just beyond the window. Watching, waiting, whispering my sins back to me. "You can't escape, you belong to us now." I pressed against the door, heart racing, panic rising. The weight of the room seemed to push down, suffocating, as the whispers morphed into laughter. This dark force was ready to pull me into an inescapable void. Just before everything slipped away, I caught a glimpse of something in the corner of my eye, a flicker of movement, a shadow that was neither part of the whispers nor the figure standing before me. It drew me in, carrying the promise of answers or more horrifying truths. What awaited me beyond that door was a descent into the very heart of darkness. I had no choice but to find out. What awaited me beyond that door? I barely turned the knob before the door swung open violently, as if it had been waiting to unleash its fury. The outside world came rushing back, a suffocating rush of cold air mingling with fear. I stumbled back, falling into the darkened room, the laughter ringing in my ears now replaced by a deafening silence. The shadows stretched in unnatural angles, flickering like flames, teasing the edges of my sanity. A sharp gasp escaped my lips as I noticed what lay before me. There, perched ominously in the corner like a spider waiting for its prey, was an antique cabinet. The wood was dark, aged, and menacing, with traces of dust making it look as if it hadn't been opened in decades. Its door was slightly ajar, a gap wide enough to feel the chilling breath of the darkness that lingered within. "Sam," I called again, though I felt foolish doing so. The name echoed back, twisted by the emptiness that surrounded me. I forced my legs to move toward the cabinet, each hesitant step keeping rhythm with the pounding of my heart. The closer I got, the colder the air seemed to become, bathing me in a raw sense of dread. I reached out gingerly, feeling a sudden jolt shoot through me as my fingers brushed against the wooden surface. A low thrumming emanated from deep within, a heartbeat that synchronized with my own racing pulse. The whispers returned, wrapping around me like barbed wire. "Open it," they coaxed. Find the truth. Taking a shaky breath, I pulled the door wider. The contents inside were shrouded in darkness, but a faint glow seemed to pulse from within. I glanced over my shoulder, caught again by the silhouettes at the window, shadowy figures with eyes that sparkled with anticipation. They urged me forward, and against every instinct screaming for me to flee, I leaned closer. Inside, a collection of items lay waiting, each one strange, each one compelling. A cracked mirror, its surface rippled and warped. A collection of brittle newspapers, edges curling, headlines screaming of fate and tragedy. But it was a small, leather-bound book that drew my eye the most, ensnaring my attention with an almost magnetic force. As I lifted it out, an exhalation swept through the room, like the release of a long-held breath. The whispers intensified, swirling around me, eager, frantic. "Read the rules, understand." My hands trembled as I opened the book. The pages were filled with fine print, almost too small to read. I squinted, trying to grasp the words, my mind racing as I deciphered one clear instruction. Rule 1, don't break the circle. I froze, feeling an electric charge shoot through the air. I had no idea what circle they were speaking of, but a deep fear settled in my gut, hinting at a terrible truth. Before I could digest what I found, a crash echoed through the house, an explosion of noise that shattered the fragile quiet. Heart racing, I swung around to the door, now barricaded not just by the shadows but by something lurking beyond. Panic took hold. Had they come for me? Or was it Sam? The door splintered, a glimmer of light broke through the cracks, illuminating grotesque shapes moving outside in fevered excitement. Whispers transformed into screams, chanting something that felt sinister and urgent. "You must decide before the time runs out." I clutched the book to my chest, fighting the urge to throw it away, to hide from the impending chaos. But as the shadows lunged closer, forcing their presence through the door, I realized this wasn't just a decision, it was a fight for survival. What circles had I already broken? What awaited me if I could not follow the unseen rules? The shadows pressed nearer, hungry, waiting. I had to make a choice. Panic and determination battled within me as I cast one last glance at the door, feeling its weight as it buckled under pressure. Would I uncover the truth of the rules before it was too late? Or was I already trapped in a nightmare of my own design? With the echoes of the whispers still lingering, my heart raced, and time was running out. The door creaked ominously as it buckled under the weight of the chaos outside. My heart thundered, each beat echoing like an ominous drum warning of impending doom. Shadows surged closer. They twisted and writhed, their whispers becoming a cacophony of demands that clawed at my mind. Decide before the time runs out. I felt a grip tighten around my throat. Fear anchored me in this moment of dread, and the book against my chest felt simultaneously like a burden and a lifeline. Time was slipping away, and my mind raced with possibilities. What exactly did the first rule mean? Swallowing hard, I scanned the titles on the spine of the leather-bound book. No title, just a deep, haunting sense of something hidden within. The echoes of laughter from earlier morphed into something grotesque, mocking me with every gasp that escaped my lips. "Open it, you coward," they taunted, urging me to obey the commands of the darkness. I thought of Sam. I had to do something. My fingers quivered against the cover as I shifted my attention to the room around me. The cabinet, with its ominous contents, felt spectral, almost sentient. Something wasn't right. The air was thickening, growing heavy with unseen presences. That crash from before still echoed in my mind. I had to survive, to understand why I was being drawn into this horror. With a racing pulse, I had to decide. I could stay hidden or begin my search for answers that might lead to salvation or doom. I recalled the headlines from the newspapers scattered inside the cabinet. Tragedy and fate echoed in my ears. Maybe there were connections, a trail of clues hidden within the depths of these shadows. What if breaking the circle was the only way to break free? I thought, repressing the full weight of dread squeezing my chest. The shadows pulsed at the door like a living entity, eager to share their secrets or to consume me. Suddenly, a voice sliced through the din, clear and desperate, "You can't trust the darkness." It was a cry from within my mind, a reminder of the horror standing just outside the door. I staggered back toward the cabinet, needing to find anything that could give me more clarity. I opened the leather-bound book again, trembling. Fingers trembling, I flipped to the next page, and a chill swept over me. The print was larger now, more legible, but the rules became twisted and horrific. Rule 2, do not accept what the shadows offer. I gasped, feeling hot breath at my neck, an overwhelming presence behind me. It was a warning, simple yet profound. What do the shadows offer? I whispered, my breath hitching at the thought of accepting anything from this cursed darkness. Just then, the door exploded inwards with a splintering crash. Fragments flew across the room, illuminating grotesque forms that poured in like dark oil. They danced through the opening with abandon, their faces obscured, but their intentions clear. The whispers rose to a frenzied pitch, chanting something unintelligible, inevitably dragging me closer to the brink. Fear overwhelmed reason. I turned back to the cabinet, the book clutched tightly in my palm. What if I could reverse their power? What if the rules were a map, guiding me through this chaos? In a split second, I made a decision, would confront the shadows. I leaned closer, heart pounding, determined to read Rule 3 before it was too late. But as I read, my skin crawled. Rule 3, break the circle, you unleash what lies beneath. I froze, barely processing the weight of the warning. Across the room, the shadows hungered, their shapes flickering, hungry and pulsating with anticipation. This was no ordinary fight. I was standing at the edge of something much darker. Could I handle what I was about to unleash? Would I dare to break the circle? Just as panic surged through me, time felt like a thin thread, fraying with every heartbeat. The true horror was not knowing what I might set loose. What awaited me if I followed through? The figures advanced, a tidal wave of shadow threatening to drown me. Nowhere to run. The book felt like a raging fire in my hands, knowing I had to act before the darkness consumed me whole. What had I stumbled into, and what real truth would be revealed when the circle finally broke? The shadows surged forward, their voracious hunger palpable. Panic clawed at my throat, each breath more labored than the last. My instincts screamed at me to flee, to turn and run from the encroaching darkness, but it was too late for that. With the weight of the book in my hands, I felt cornered, a prey to something ancient, something that thrummed with menace. Time is running out, a voice hissed, echoing in my ears like a funeral dirge. The room twisted around me, the walls bending and warping as if the very structure were alive. I struggled to focus, eyes darting back to the grotesque forms that danced toward me, their mouths open and gaping, ready to consume what was left of my sanity. Break the circle, I murmured to myself, the words tasting like bile on my tongue. The thought of unleashing what lay beneath filled me with a despair deeper than I had ever known. The very rule that demanded action also bubbled with dread. What was beneath? What terror awaited me on the other side? The shadows pressed closer. The murmurs grew deafening, a cacophony of voices pulling at my mind, laughing, crying, pleading. I clutched the book tighter, my fingers digging into the leather as if I could anchor myself to it, to the scant slivers of hope it might offer. Open it, they urged in unison, the twisted shapes swelling in number. Open it and find freedom. Open it and save yourself. No. I shook my head, agitated and frenzied. Did they truly mean to guide me, or was this another trap? They had already taunted me into panic. What other manipulations lay hidden in their insidious voices? Focus, I thought desperately. I steeled my mind and turned back to the book. Rule 1 had already driven me to make a choice, Rule 2 warned against it, and now Rule 3 felt like a blade, poised at my throat. But what if there was something else hidden inside this tome, something that might help me make sense of everything? With shaking hands, I flipped to another page, desperate for insight. My breath hitched. The page displayed sketches, dark and haunting. Each shadowy illustration whispered 1,000 chilling stories of souls trapped, of battles lost, of lives extinguished. Among the grotesque figures, something caught my eye, a single word scrawled beneath one of the images: devour. Dread pooled in my stomach. I looked up, realizing the shadows had halted, their anticipation palpable, their grim excitement feeding off my fear. They're waiting, I realized. Waiting for my weakness. My pulse raced. If I unleashed this darkness, what power might I summon? Could I twist it to defend myself rather than succumb? But then what if they turned upon me? In that moment, clarity sliced through the panic. With a newfound resolve, I took a deep breath, forcing myself away from the book as if it were a living snake at my feet. The shadows surged, and I felt their chilling breath on my skin, urging me to make a move. Break the circle, I murmured, locking eyes with the advancing tide of shadows. What if breaking the circle is not just a rule but a choice? A choice I can control? The tension coiled within me like a spring, ready to snap. I would swing for the fences. Eyes wide, heart racing, I took a step forward, shouting into the darkness, I choose to break the circle on my own terms. The shadows recoiled, pulsing as if struck. But the moment of triumph did not last. The closest figure hissed, its face contorting into a mask of rage. The whispers turned to shouts, echoing around the room, ferocious and chaotic, spiraling into a tempest of anger. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. It was alive. My heart raced as I braced myself, realizing I hadn't defined the terms of my action. Could I truly face what lay beneath the surface, and what would happen if I did? As the room began to tremble, the shadows howled louder, a brew of fury and terror attempting to drown me. Time became liquid, slipping away as I stood frozen, suspended between choices. The darkness pressed in, and I was left with one overwhelming question: what would emerge when I dared to break the circle? The air thickened as I braced myself, anticipation mingling with dread. The shadows trembled, shifting like a living tapestry, each ripple a warning and a promise. I had dared to challenge their dominion, such audacity would not go unpunished. The next moment would define everything. Face us, the voice rumbled from the farthest dark. It was no longer just whispers, it was a command laced with malice. Face what awaits or be consumed. The floor quaked, sending chills spearing up my spine. Instinct clawed at my mind, urging me to run, but I stood paralyzed, my mind racing with conflicting thoughts. There was a choice here, nestled beneath the layer of terror. I could give in, allow the shadows to take me, or stand firm and demand my power. I took a deep breath, forcing my fingers to loosen around the book. Its dark cover vibrated, thrumming as if sensing my turmoil. A choice had to be made. The shadows were coaxing me, drawing me close with their sickly sweet promises, but I couldn't forget what had happened last time I let desperation guide me. Devour, I whispered again, the words suddenly explosive. It lingered in the air, charged with meaning. Was I ready to unleash that which was hidden below, the darkness I might not be able to control? The shadows seemed to swell, their forms merging and swirling, growing larger, stretching toward me with a hypnotic rhythm. I felt my breath hitching again, each inhalation twisting into a knot of panic. But in my chest, a flicker of something else ignited a spark of hope, of defiance. "Leave this place!" I shouted, the words rushing out like a flood, empowered by the desperate fire raging within. "You don't define me." For a heartbeat, the shadows recoiled, shrieking in protest. Their whispers clashed against the solidity of my statement, a scream of rage that felt like knives scraping against my skull. But with my words, the trembling in the floor shifted. With courage, I could alter the very fabric of this battle. The air crackled, a sharp scent of ozone filling my nostrils as if a storm were brewing inside the room. Every pulse of sound resonated with my heartbeat, every thud, creating a rhythm that shattered the horror around me. "Leave or I will break the circle!" I screamed, my voice peaking in urgency. I felt the darkness pull back, as though sensing my resolve. They had fed off my fear, now I would not be their prey. "Very well," the voice hissed again, but this time it wavered, uncertainty lacing its malevolence. "But know this, breaking the circle is not without consequence. Shadows linger even in the light." A vision flickered before me, a flash of a twisted road leading deeper into an abyss. I grasped this insight, a revelation erupting in my mind. If I let go of fear, would I even understand what lay beyond this room? What lurked there? The choice felt monumental. Then, with a fierce determination, I shouted again, "I choose to stand my ground." The shadows recoiled, their forms distorting, swaying violently before halting. For the first time, their dread-infused whispers turned into a wretched wail, a sound that reverberated deep in my core. But that fierce urge to break the circle came with its own risks, a price I could not yet see. I braced for the fallout, the echoes warning me of impending doom. With every ounce of strength pouring into me, the walls shimmered. Reality split, a doorway forming where darkness met light, the shadowy figures trembling with rage as the threshold expanded. What would lie through that portal? Would breaking the circle unveil salvation or unleash true chaos? As I took a hesitant step towards the opening, the shadows howled louder, desperation turning their cries into a chorus of anger shattering the stillness like glass. And I knew, deep in my bones, as I steeled myself, my decision was only the beginning. What lay beyond the veil of darkness was still a question waiting to unfold. The portal flickered before me, a jagged slice of light in a world drowning in shadows. My heart raced, each beat a warning drum echoing the gravity of my choice. I was teetering on the edge of the unknown, uncertainty threading through my veins like ice. As I stepped closer, the darkness around me roared, a tempest of despair and fury. It surrounded me, tightening like a noose. The whispers surged again, insidious, vile. They crept into my mind, a steady drip of fear seeking to drown my resolve. "Come back." A voice purred, soft and inviting. "You're not ready for what lies beyond, you can't break what was never yours to wield." That sweet tone begged me to turn away, to surrender once again. A coldness clawed at my spine, and I could almost feel the cold breath of the shadows brushing against my neck, promising eternal silence if I just succumbed. "No!" I gasped, panic shoving through the cracks of my courage. "I'm not afraid. You come from fear, yet here I am, ready to face what you hide." My own voice was a thin shield, trembling against the onslaught. With a surge of desperate strength, I plunged through the gateway. The moment I crossed into the light, a shattering silence engulfed me. The cacophony of screams faded as if they never existed, leaving behind an unsettling void. The world solidified around me, revealing an alien landscape. The ground was cracked, blackened, with molten streams winding like serpents under a sun that cast no warmth. I stumbled forward. Each step felt heavier, weighed down by invisible chains threatening to pull me back toward the shadows. The aroma of burnt earth filled my nostrils, and somewhere, in the distance, a figure moved. A black silhouette outlined against the chaos, a shadow I instantly recognized. "What have you done?" The voice drifted, laced with condescension and warning. It was impossible to discern its origin, it echoed all around me. You have broken the circle, and now you tread a path unwalked. An urgent sorrow washed over me, tugging painfully at my heart. I had sought freedom, but it seemed I had unlocked a door better left shut. The chains of the past clinked ominously in the backdrop of this desolation. Face what awaits, the voice intoned again, now bitterly amused, as if reveling in my disorientation. The ground shook beneath me, and I fell to my knees, my breath coming quick and ragged. The figure ahead advanced, gliding closer with a grace abnormal against the backdrop of chaos. I strained to see, heart thudding, skin crawling. The nearer it came, the more its features sharpened a twisted visage of someone I once knew, a face from my own memories, yet so deeply marred by darkness that recognition felt like a betrayal. "Why did you come here?" It whispered, lungs exhaling the hint of smoke and ash. "You sought to wield power without understanding the price." Panic clawed at me. My choices echoed in my skull, each one a jagged tooth biting painfully. I had to. I won't be a slave to fear. With a laugh that vibrated through the air like a shuddering earthquake, the figure spoke, "Then welcome, for the shadows will always be with you. Darkness isn't a place, it's a part of you now." I shivered, the realization crashing down like a heavy weight. In facing the shadows, I hadn't just dived into a sea of chaos, I had awakened something insidious within myself. Suddenly, the ground tremored again, and I felt a rapid shift in the air, raising the hairs on my neck. The dark figure reached out a hand, offering yet another choice, but the stakes had become hauntingly clear. Would I take that hand and plunge deeper into the abyss, or would I fight not only the shadows without, but the darkness within me? The world spun around me, choices swirling dangerously close. In that moment, I had to decide whether to draw the line or to slip fully into this new reality of uncertainty and despair. What new horrors and steps awaited me should I choose to embrace this darkness? The tension clawed at my insides as I knelt there, staring into the abyss of my own making. The figure loomed closer, shadows wrapping around it like living tendrils, echoing promises of power and knowledge. "Fear is a choice, just like light and darkness," it crooned, the voice dripping with sweetness laced with malice. "You can harness it, or you can be swallowed whole." The urgency to fight back surged within me, a visceral reaction fueled by the memories of Samantha and the chilling cries of the forgotten. I shook my head, desperately trying to clear the fog of doubt hanging over me. "You don't own me," I shouted, voice trembling but resolute. "I choose my path." With that declaration, the figure's grin twisted, a warped reflection of twisted ambition. What you choose may not reflect what you truly desire. Once crossed, the lines cannot be uncrossed. The ground beneath me trembled in agreement, echoing its warning, but I stood firm. The flicker of resolve ignited a fire in my veins. "Then let us see what I can do." Before I fully grasped my intention, I tore my gaze from the figure and slammed my hand down on the ground, channeling everything I possessed into a surge of power, a desperate plea for agency amid chaos. I would not let the shadows dictate my choices, I would seize control, bending this energy toward my will. In a sudden rush, vibrant light erupted around me, dazzling and overwhelming. I felt the darkness surging back, recoiling from the bright force I wielded. The figure's smile faded, replaced by a grimace of realization as it staggered backward. "You think light will save you?" it hissed, rage erupting. "Light is merely the absence of darkness. You are still bound to it." But the warmth coursing through my veins felt real and strong, transcending what the darkness claimed. "No!" I screamed, and with that cry, I pushed back. The shadows crawled and howled with fury, dark tendrils retreating, their hunger transforming into desperate grasping. Suddenly, a second gust blew through the shifting landscape, and memories came flooding back like a torrential wave, the laughter of Samantha, the vibrant colors of childhood, the innocence I'd fought so hard to protect. "Samantha!" I called into the chaos. "Where are you?" The world blurred around me, torn fabric of reality wavering like a mirage, and amid the cacophony, a soft voice broke through, calm and soothing. "I'm here," it echoed, brief but bright, a beacon in the storm. As the light surrounding me grew stronger, I found myself facing a second figure, a girl standing amidst the tumult, her presence cutting like a knife through the dark. Sammy's eyes sparkled as she stepped into the light. But she was different now, wiser, although still echoing that familiar innocence. "Sam." Relief washed over me, momentarily drowning out fear. "I've come for you. We can make this right." With a flicker of her smile, she motioned for me to follow, and just like that, the shadows shrank back, hissing their rage. Grasping her hand, I felt an electric current pulse between us, strength vibrating through me. "Together," she whispered, her words weaving into my resolve. "We can face this." I drew in a deep breath. "Then I choose to face this for us, for everyone lost." The shadows thrashed around us, trying to tug and pull, but the bond we shared ignited a fire that flared brightly. Color poured back into the world, carving a path through darkness as we stood united. "Now!" Samantha shouted, and with a mutual understanding, we pushed outward toward the swirling shadows. "Break the circle." As we plunged forward, a radiant burst of energy erupted, sending shockwaves through the fabric of the world. Reality split open further than I ever thought possible, revealing scenes of loss and despair, neighbors caught in the grasp of fear, trapped in the shadows, and each of their faces flickered hauntingly around us. "Help us," they murmured, shadows clawing toward the light, fingers reaching desperately, hungry for freedom from the bonds of fear. "Listen," I shouted, refocusing the energy of our light on them. "We can do this. Together." The air crackled as the light expanded, resonating with that fervent hope that refused to be extinguished. One by one, I saw the faces of my neighbors appearing in the light, their expressions unraveling from despair into determination, shadows sloughing away like a faded memory. The walls of darkness trembled. My heart soared as Samantha and I created a circle of hope, the shadows spiraling around us and flailing in vain. "We're breaking this," I gasped, focus unwavering, as the light radiated from us, enveloping the darkness wholly. In a blinding flash, the shadows disintegrated into whirls of ash and smoke, dispersing into every crevice. I stood panting as the void opened up, exposing the glimpses of vibrant suburbia beyond, sunlight dancing across overturned lives, laughter echoing through the streets. I turned to Samantha, who wore a knowing smile, and I knew this wasn't just a battle against fear, it was a chance for redemption, a moment to build connections and heal. Together, we would rebuild, hand in hand. With the weight of the darkness lifted, I looked back at the fading shadows and whispered, "You no longer hold me." As the light began to solidify into something tangible, I felt the boundaries of our world shift, merging with another brighter realm where fears held no power. Hand in hand, we stepped forward, and each step resonated with hope. And as my chest swelled, I knew this was the first day of forever we were free. This battle was over, but a canvas of endless possibilities awaited, a future brightened by the light of resilience and connection. And finally, as I embraced Samantha, I realized the true victory lay not just in surviving the darkness, but in celebrating the light shared by others, the paths woven through laughter, love, and unyielding hope. Don't let this journey end here. You need to subscribe now for more exclusive stories. You can't miss what comes next. Smash that like button now to fuel our community's flame. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories, because every word matters. And for the love of all things spooky, share this story with at least 5 friends who need a dose of this thrilling adventure. Your support keeps us alive.